The world is not in your books and maps. It's out there.
I can't just go running off into the blue. Wait. I am a Baggins of Bag End.
So, this is the Hobbit.
Hello, this is Chris, also known as the Hobbit fan editor, and I am very pleased to announce the release of my fan edit for The Hobbit, which is called The Hobbit, or There and Back Again. This has been a project that I've been working on for about 8 years now. It's been an absolute labour of love, and at the best of times, just a labour. It's actually kind of a shock to me that this project is finally out. This was like a project that I kept saying one day it will be released, one day it will be finished, one day it will be out there. And it just seemed like a day that would never come until today. I've got a link in the description down below where you can find this edit right now. It's on Mega. Please go and watch it. I will say, just as kind of like a caveat, make sure you own a copy of Peter Jackson's Hobbit trilogy, extended editions or theatrical versions. Fan edits are kind of like a sticky issue really when it comes to things, and just, that's my one caveat, is just don't be downloading this film if you don't already own Peter Jackson's film. Try and do the responsible thing if you can, please. But yeah, so I wanted to kind of introduce and kind of tell you a little bit about my edit if you're maybe just discovering this video for the first time, that there's another new Hobbit edit out there in a very oversaturated market. What am I bringing new to the table? There are so many fan editors out there that have done some absolute wonderful things when it comes to the Hobbit films, and very different as well. And that's what I love about the fan editing community, especially when it comes to the Hobbit films, is everyone's different approach. Everyone's got a different idea of what it should be. So what's my idea? what can you expect to find in this 5-hour edit? Well, first and foremost, some of you might be put off by the runtime. Initially, when I first started editing this project 8 years ago, I think it was 8 years ago, it was right after Desolation of Smaug came out on home video, whenever that was, and that's immediately when I started my edit. Initially, with a 2-film plan in mind, I wanted part 1 to begin at, well, the beginning, and end with the barrel escape scene with the final shot of Bard, which was actually Peter Jackson's original plan for the 2-film split before it became a trilogy. And then movie 2 was going to be, Lake Town, get into the mountains, Smaug, and the Battle of the Five Armies in the ending. And I remember going to see Battle of the Five Armies with like an editor's mind. I had already started my edit at that point, and I was looking at what new content I'd be able to work with. What am I being presented for Battle of the Five Armies? What can I lose? What can I get rid of? What can I switch around? And that's pretty much how my viewing experience of Battle of the Five Armies went. As the years went on and I kind of looked at that 2-film split, and there's nothing wrong with a 2-film split, but it just felt like part 1 at the end didn't arrive at any kind of like emotionally fulfilling finale. Although it's a part 1 of 2, I felt like each part needed to stand on its own and come to some kind of emotional conclusion, and it just didn't. It just ended like on a cliffhanger, pretty much open-ended, with no sense of character arc or resolution really to anyone, and that was a problem to me. So eventually I settled on the idea of just having one complete film, just one, just beginning to end, telling the story of The Hobbit. Now, there is an intermission in there at the halfway point, so you can watch both halves if you want to. You don't have to do a 5-hour sit of this film. I realise that's an extraordinarily large amount of time. You don't have to do that. You can really chop and change, and the way that I've structured my edit is very much like the book. It's very episodic. It matches chapter by chapter as much as I can, and in order to keep that momentum. And I will say momentum is key to this, because I've removed all the filler, all the stuff that isn't necessary to the Hobbit story, and it's just telling the story of the Hobbit. It moves at a great pace. So it feels long, don't get me wrong, but it doesn't feel 5 hours long, so bear that in mind. What else can you expect to see from this edit? So obviously with removing all of the filler, it's just a much more focused edit, especially on the character of Bilbo, and just telling the story of the Hobbit. This has been my crutch, this has been my guide, this has been my Bible, not even just for this edit, for pretty much all of my life. As you can see, it's like falling apart and it's all dog-eared, and I wouldn't change this book for the world. I'll never get rid of this book. This has been with me since, like, I want to say the age of 8, possibly 9. It's my favourite book of all time. As you can imagine, I probably wouldn't bother wasting, or not wasting, sorry, devoting 8 years of my life to creating an edit for this thing. But whenever I would question myself or question the decision, I would always go to the book every single time, see how Tolkien did it, to see how the story was told, and try and match it as best as I could to this. And that's what I've tried to do as well, with the idea of also maintaining integrity as a film. And that was important to me as well. You know, some edits cut loads of stuff out and make it as rigid to the book as possible, and I've tried to do that too. But there are some things, you know, still things that I'm not keen on in Peter Jackson's Hobbit trilogy, that unfortunately do have to still stay in the film in order for the integrity of the film and the flow of the film to work. So there are a few moments, but it's much more stripped back, much more streamlined, and actually tells the story of the Hobbit. And those things that I'm not too keen on, I've tried to... You'll see it in the edit. I've tweaked them, I've chopped and changed them, I've moved them around. So I feel like they have a place now in the film, much better than they do sort of like in the original take on the trilogy. So another thing as well is that I've tried to make it as lore faithful as possible. And you know, The Lord of the Rings is also kind of guilty of this too. If you read the book, it does change a lot of things from the book. It's not completely lore accurate. It's much better, I would say, overall than the Hobbit trilogy was in terms of lore accuracy, but there are, you know, a number of deviations even in the Lord of the Rings trilogy. But this is something that I wanted to try and correct as much as I could with this new trilogy. So with this new edit that I've done. So some things you can expect to find in there. Probably the big one, and the big sort of like proponent of being lore faithful, is that the main antagonist of Azog the Defiler, the Pale Orc, has been renamed and repurposed to be the character of Bolg. Bolg is sort of like the main goblin bad guy towards the end of the book during the Battle of the Five Armies, and that is something that I've wanted to preserve. Without going into too much of a deep dive into Lord of the Rings lore and Middle-earth lore, Azog the Defiler was an orc. He was a Pale Orc, but he was killed 200 years before the events of The Hobbit even took place. And it was his son, Bolg of the North, that vowed revenge against the dwarfs to repay them, to get revenge for the death of his father against the entire race of dwarves. And that's where the antagonist of this edit comes into it. So the main character has been renamed to Bolg. There's voice acting that you'll see in the edit as well, so that the name is switched. And I feel like this just makes the film much more cohesive and much more enjoyable to watch, knowing that we have a villain with a motivation now. You know, it's quite a simple motivation, like, the dwarves killed my father, I want to kill all the dwarves, but it's a motivation, it's a lore faithful motivation, and it's just great to see that character repurposed. You know, there are some other things in there as well. I don't want to give everything away in this announcement video. I might throw up some clips over these too, but the thrush, for example, the thrush that knocks and you know, shows the way, shows the hidden door and the keyhole. The thrush has a lot more to do in the book and is instrumental in the death of Smaug. You might even see that in this edit in some respects, so be sure to look out for that too. Other lore faithful things. In the films, obviously Sting, out of the 3 swords that are discovered in the Troll Horde, Sting is the only sword in the films that glows blue. And even then, during the film, there are moments where the blade doesn't glow. Even when there are orcs and goblins nearby, it's very strange, it's very hit and miss in the films. That is something I've corrected in my edit. Now, every time there is an orc or a goblin nearby, you best believe that Sting is glowing blue. And not only is Sting glowing blue, but I've also painstakingly rotoscoped the blades for Orcrist, Thorin's sword, and Glamdring as well. Now, I realised that Glamdring didn't glow blue in the Lord of the Rings films. it should have glowed blue, and this is something that, you know, for a future edit down the line, I might take on the Lord of the Rings films as well. But I just wanted this film to be as lore faithful as possible, so you will also see Glamdring glow blue as well. It was a very lengthy process that took many, many, many months to do and was absolutely mind-numbing, but, you know, the results I think speak for themselves. I'm very excited to see what you guys think of that too. As I mentioned in this edit, you'll see new voice acting for some characters. And a more fleshed out ending as well. You know, on the opposite end of the spectrum, some people could say that Return of the King had too many endings. I disagree. I think the endings were absolutely fine for that and felt like a good sense of resolution. But on the other hand, I felt like The Hobbit's ending was kind of glossed over, and there were many story beats that weren't tied up. The distribution of the treasure. Was Lake Town ever rebuilt? You know, what happened with King Dane? And, you know, all of that stuff. And you'll see a more fleshed out ending in this one. Watch all of the edit, and when you get to the ending, let me know what you think of it. There are so many more things that I can't even talk about. There's colour correction, there's scenes that are moved around or moved to the very end of the edit. Everything. There's new music, there's new musical cues. It's just, it's great that it's finally out there. And as you know, this has been a very collaborative process as well to get this edit made, and I'm going to make a special thanks video as well to go alongside the edit next week. You know, there have been so many fan editors. JX Editor, who's been incredible helping me with this thing for like 4 years, I want to say. You know, it was just a simple YouTube video of asking for help with one change, and I mean, he pretty much collaborated with, you know, he was like an editorial advisor, I would say, you know, helping me, instructing me. The guy basically taught me Adobe Premiere, so I want to say a massive thanks to JX Editor for just, yeah, helping this get made. It would not have got made without you. You know, M4 as well, who himself made an incredible fan edit of the Hobbit films. You know, helped supply me with some of the deleted scenes, and it was great talking. It was great talking to another editor about the process as well, who's, you know, was working on his own version of The Hobbit and discussing ideas back and forth. So I want to say thanks to him as well. And many other people that have followed the project for years, that have commented, that have, you know, given me feedback, which has helped shape the project. As I say, I'm going to produce a special thanks video next week that's going to go into it in much more detail, but I just wanted to take the opportunity now of saying thank you. I really hope you like this edit. This is a project that I can update, you know, if there's something that doesn't quite work in there, or, you know, if people want to see certain elements changed. It is something I'm open to. But this is a thank you. I wanted to get this out there now before the 20th anniversary of The Lord of the Rings. And, you know, if you are feeling brave, if you are doing a Lord of the Rings marathon to celebrate the 20th anniversary of Fellowship of the Ring, maybe you could start with this on Saturday. Give this a watch, do a 5-hour watch along of this one, and then go on to your Lord of the Rings films. But yeah, that'll do it for me for right now, and I hope you guys enjoy the edit. Let me know what you think. Thanks, everyone.
You're only quite a little fellow. We're in a wide world, after all.